Weber, what was your reaction when you realized that your brother had concealed his responsibility for causing your accident?
I was bitter. I thought of all the years he'd gotten away with it, and I was bitter at first.
You say at first?
Well, I finally realized I wasn't the only one that had suffered. I had professionals to teach me how to live with my blindness. But my brother had to learn to live with his guilt alone.
You speak of your brother's feelings of guilt. This is a natural assumption.
It's not an assumption, Mr. Fowler. Your Honor, you see, before my accident, Lee ignored me, but after the accident, he was different. He put me above everything, even his wife. He was always one step behind me, hovering, protecting me, fighting my battles for me, even when there were none to fight. Our first real argument was when I wanted to go away to law school, and Lee wanted me to stay here. He wanted me to hang around his neck like a living albatross, dependent on him for every need, every decision. I'd become his whole world, his life. All he wanted in return was that he should become my life. That's why I say that neither of us escaped suffering for what happened on that bluff.
There were two tragic incidents on the bluff, Mr. Weber. Which one are you referring to now?
The first one. Ann Howard's death is another matter.
Do you separate these two incidents in your own mind?
Yes, I do.
Completely?
Completely.
Mr. Weber, on the morning of Ann Howard's death, when your brother struck you, was this a usual or an unusual occurrence?
It had never happened before.
Was anyone else present?
My sister-in-law.
The defendant's wife?
Yes. Sandra Weber.
Now, when your brother left the house, when was it that you encountered him again?
In front of the drugstore on the square.
You stated that he said that he couldn't trust you, that he felt he had to protect himself. Do you recall your reply to this?
Yes, I told him he had to be stopped. Whether he liked it or not, I had to go to Stephen Court.
And did he make any further effort to detain you?
No.
How do you explain that?
Well, there were witnesses on the square that saw what was happening. Norman Harrington, Mrs. Elliott Carson, others, I suppose.
Did either of them speak to you or to the defendant?
Not at that time.
Objection. The witness obviously can have only hearsay awareness of their presence.
Your Honor, I have already indicated my intention to call Mrs. Carson to the stand. I expect to establish her presence there from her own testimony.
Objection overruled. Continue, Mr. Fowler.
You're letting this guy walk all over you.
What did you do next, Mr. Weber?
I stepped off the curb in front of a car.
Without any warning?
Maybe my brother was too excited to notice it. Anyway, I went over to the bank building to Mr. Cord's office, but he wasn't there. So I dictated my statement to his secretary and signed it. When I came outside, Lee was waiting for me, and I told him it was done.
What was his reaction?
Angry. I could tell by his voice. He said, "You're coming with me." And that's when I knew that it wasn't the threat of public exposure or even punishment he was afraid of. He was afraid of losing the hold he had over me all those years.
And did you go with him?
No. Norman Harrington was suddenly there, and he told Lee that he and I were supposed to go sailing that afternoon. Later, Norman told me that Mrs. Carson had asked him to rescue me. I asked Norman then to drive me up to Dr. Rossi's cottage.
Why there?
I wanted to warn him. I wanted him to convince Ann Howard that the real danger wasn't over. It was just beginning. I even thought maybe Ann should leave Peyton Place because I knew as long as she was here, she wasn't safe.
Why Dr. Rossi? Why not Miss Howard's own lawyer?
Because I wasn't convinced that Mr. Cord was sufficiently involved to take the danger seriously.
Now, did you find Dr. Rossi at home?
No, he wasn't there.
Mr. Weber, in the statement that you made on the day of Miss Howard's death, you said that you left Dr. Rossi's cottage and you walked 3 miles down the beach to the Stuyvesant Caves, where you were trapped by the tide. If you were so anxious to see Dr. Rossi, I don't understand why you didn't wait for him.
I did wait.
At the caves?
No, not at the caves.
But
I never went to the caves. I lied. I was trying to protect my brother.
are you saying that you waited at the cottage?
No, I didn't wait at the cottage. I was afraid. Afraid Lee would find me there, so I went down a trail that leads down below the bluff, and I hid on a ledge.
How long were you there?
Long enough, I finally heard voices.
Whose voices?
Ann Howard's and my brother's.
What were they saying?
I couldn't make out much of what they said because of the wind and tide.
Well, if you couldn't hear what they were saying, how can you be sure you can identify them?
Because my hearing is sharper than most people's, Mr. Fowler. I use my ears like most people use their sight.
Go on.
I heard what sounded like a blow.
Objection. This is the witness's own conclusion.
Sustained. Proceed.
I heard Ann scream. I wanted to run to her, but I didn't. I stayed on the bluff, hiding. Then I heard the rocks start to go above me. Rocks pouring past me down to the surf. I knew more than rocks went by. I knew she was down there, too.
There we are, inside. Now, this is what we call front hall, you see. Not bad, eh, Matt?
Matthew.
Oh, Matthew. Now, if you look very quickly to our right, you catch a glimpse of what is known as the living room. That's not bad, huh? Wait till you get a look at the kitchen. The greatest room in the whole... Hey, look. Leprechauns.
It's beautiful.
I wonder who did this.
There's a card.
Oh, yeah. To the Carsons. While Matthew is sleeping, take 10 paces forward into the kitchen, open the refrigerator, and find a welcome home lunch. Enjoy yourselves. Love, Betty and Stephen. What a nice thing to do.
Betty must have rushed home from the hospital.
That lady has got quite a touch, quite a touch. Come on, let's show Matthew some more.
Not right now, Eddie.
Can't we show him the rest of the house?
No.
Why not? It'll only take us a minute, honey.
Because he's fallen asleep.
Asleep? What do you mean? You think my talking is going to wake him up or something?
We'll have to take
Honey,
advantage
how
of it while
can
we
he
can
wake
get
up
it.
with the sound of my voice?
A funny feeling you're trying to tell me something. You mean he's going to cry?
Constantly. You've repainted.
Yeah, you like it?
Oh, yes. Matthew, you'd have hated pink, wouldn't you, darling? Huh?
Come on, Matthew, look around. This is your room now, all nice and blue. How about that? A room all to yourself, eh? Well, that's pretty nice, huh? Have a room all
Would
to
you
yourself.
hush a minute?
Why, what are you going to do?
Trying to get him back to sleep, hopefully.
Do they really sleep all the time, or are you just raising my #1 son to be lazy? Can you use the word beautiful to describe a boy?
Why not?
My son is beautiful. No, that didn't sound right. My son is handsome.
How about that?
Welcome home.
It's nice to be here. Welcome home, Matthew. Chris, where have you been?
In Fowler's office, what?
Why didn't you tell me about the ledge? The entire time you were arguing, saying we had to do something, you never said a word. Now, why didn't you once say to me, Sandy, I'm not guessing, I know, because I was there.
Look, Sandy, don't try to play lawyer. You haven't got the head for it.
Yes, but I do know one thing. You can say you've forgiven Lee all you want, but I know you haven't. They're just words.
Mr. Weber, I'm the bailiff, sir. You're a little early. There'll be at least another 45 minutes or so of recess.
Thank you.
So if you want to go for a cup of coffee or anything, you've got plenty of time.
I'm comfortable here.
Hello, Chris.
It's Mr. Cord. I'm very good at voices.
You could do better on court procedure.
What does that mean?
When court reconvenes, the judge will expect a clear witness stand.
Oh?
Yes, he'll ask formally for the proceedings to start, and when Mr. Fowler's finished with you, it'll be my turn.
Just like in law school.
Just.
Well, when it is your turn, I'll be ready for you, Mr. Cord. This time.
Why are you sitting here, Chris?
I'm waiting.
Well, there are rows of seats.
Well, this is mine today.
All right. Court isn't in session. There's no one to hear us now. But I've got to know the truth about what happened to my sister at the Bluff.
You heard what I said.
I heard what you said under oath. The judge heard what you said under oath. But now I have to ask you.
Why?
Because I'm good on voices too, Chris. Now, would you like to tell me the truth? Would you like to tell it to me?
Preview from the continuing story of Peyton Place.
I seen somebody who looked like the picture in the papers. The kid was missing.
Who is this?
Why'd the kid run away? She start playing around with some boy?
Where are you calling from? Just give me the number.
Admit that you don't know. That you weren't there. Admit that your story of hiding in the ledge was just that. A story and no more. I was there and I heard.